On today's World Insight, urgent aid for children and the other vulnerable in Ukraine as the spokesperson of the United Nations Children's Fund weighs the cost of conflict on the young.
We go anywhere to support any child. Every conflict is never of that child's making.
And as Hong Kong grapples with the tide of COVID cases, the election for the region's next chief executive has been moved to May 8th. Expectations on the upcoming polls from a Hong Kong insider.
You can imagine, nobody's happy with the administration for all sorts of reasons.
Hello, I'm Tian Wei, and welcome to World Insight. A spiraling conflict between Russia and Ukraine. Over 600,000 Ukrainians have fled to the neighboring countries since Russia launched the special military operations. What difficulties do children caught in the crossfire in Ukraine face in life? What help can be offered now out of challenging situations to them? Now, my interview with James Elder, UNICEF spokesperson, an experienced humanitarian who has arrived in Lviv, in western Ukraine. Each day, many pass through Lviv on their way to Poland to seek refuge. Elder told me the efforts made by humanitarians to help are only limited given the dangerous circumstances, but the locals are also helping each other to get by the most difficult moment. James, thank you so much for joining us. I know you are on an urgent mission. Tell me where you are.
I'm in the west of Ukraine in a city called Lviv. It's about 80 kilometers from the Polish border, and it's really become a hub of distress of people who are fleeing major conflict in other parts of the country and are coming through this city as they're trying to escape with their children, mostly into Poland.
We understand a lot of them are going to Poland. Actually, the majority of the refugees are heading in that direction. Can you confirm with us?
It seems that way. It's more than 100,000 people a day. The train station here, it's a big station, is packed. It just echoes with tears. It's people who have spent the last night or two in a bunker under fire. Then it's husbands farewelling wives, husbands trying to explain to 7-year-old daughters why dad is not coming. Everyday people, accountants, physiotherapists, teachers, none of whom want to leave, but they feel they have only one decision left, and that is their children's safety. So it's now around 100,000 people a day flooding across into Poland. Of course, others to Romania, to Moldova, but here that focus is that nearest border.
A lot of them, as you said, are women and children, particularly children. Now, as UNICEF's role is to protect the livelihood of children worldwide, how are you helping assemble your capabilities over there?
It's a very good question, because right now we can't protect as we want to protect, because we know that schools, hospitals, water systems, orphanages, there are reports that all of these places are under fire. We know. So that most critical element of any work, to protect them is extremely difficult with the military operation the size of this. So we're doing what we can. Those children who come out, there's a lot of trauma. UNICEF is making sure that we do provide safe water wherever possible. Education support is never a second tier, because these kids are so stressed, they need some normalcy. Things like emergency health kits, obstetric kits. There are women having babies in bunkers on borders. So it's this whole range of emergency health care, sanitation support, both here and particularly on those border areas. We're trucking through Poland and so on, so that when people get there after a really harrowing journey, they've at least got something to ease the pain when they get to safety.
Can you confirm with us the escape route, or shall we say, or the route that the common people could take if they want to flee out of the country is still open? Is there any danger that they might be caught in crossfire even on that route?
Yes, short answer. I mean, I'm not a military expert in terms of where all the fighting is, but unfortunately we know our experience from conflicts like this, when there is this amount of fire and you have missiles going into civilian areas, then civilians trying to flee can be caught. unfortunately, yes, the routes still remain open. I mean, I talked to colleagues in Kiev, the capital, and again, it's just a sea of sadness as thousands of people are trying to make that journey. Many left the decision late because they don't want to leave. It's their city, it's their home, but they've had to now, and now it's tears. It's women and children first, and then old people. So, you know, you're seeing mums and daughters split up from grandmothers. But then, yes, if they get to a city like this in Lviv, then there is still, the route is still open for them to get into Poland. Similar in other parts. Those neighboring countries have been very good and welcoming with open arms. But normally you might see 1,000 people cross the border here. 100,000, that's very difficult for any government, any agency like UNICEF to manage. And as long as the fighting continues, those numbers will continue to escalate.
And how are you helping when you say you're providing psychological help as much as possible from your perspective to those in need?
Yeah, there's a lot of things. So we have things, for example, like mobile child protection teams. They go on both sides of the conflict line, and they're there to find children and help where there's been abuse and violence. Parts of the East where water systems get destroyed, people need clean water. Your viewers all know the criticality of that. And Ukrainians, they can't go to the rivers are frozen. So trucking in clean water, or just even getting spaces where you can put up a safe space and a kid can get some respite, do some drawings, make sure there's some health care for the mother. These are all the package of interventions that UNICEF does. And of course, in places like this, working with the local municipality. I can't overstate the sort of generosity I see of everyday Ukrainians, mums and grandmums on the road where cars are backed up, trying to get out, cooking and providing food to people who spent nights asleep in their car. People at the train station saying, you know, would you like a bed for a few hours just to rest? People handing out medicine and blankets. That first line of support is still very much coming from the communities of their fellow Ukrainians.
How are they organized, or they are just voluntarily to do it on their own?
It seems very organized. With my limited Ukrainian, my translators, the municipality, the local governments, each village seems to have a setup. You know, sometimes it's like, I don't know, a football team, Boy Scouts, this kind of thing. But they do seem, I've been to transit centers where they are set up to take people in for a night and break the journey and give them all that essential care and warmth and food. They're very organized. There's young people doing IT. There's young people signing them in. There's young people doing registration, seeing if they can contact family members. People are very stressed about those they've left behind in conflict zones. So that seems very organized from the local government. And then there's just communities. There's communities doing what they do, I guess, as all countries from China to Canada, that power of a local community, whether they've set up a football club or now they're setting up a local cooking station to feed people.
I see. How are you making sure, as the international organization, talking to both sides of the conflict so that the civilians will be provided at least a somewhat safe route to escape if they want to, and somewhat shelters to live in if they want to still remain in the cities or in the places where their home are?
Yes, I think whilst the fighting continues and, you know, bombardments on cities, as we all see, then that's extremely difficult. That such safety cannot be provided, unfortunately. I think I just would refer to the Secretary General of the United Nations, who's time and again has called for the fighting to cease. That is the only way. It will be very difficult to get humanitarian support to people. We're seeing civilians killed. As things escalate, that's going to continue. So time and again in these conflicts, as UNICEF said, we need a ceasefire. Only then can people get out safely. Only then can people talk. Only then can we make sure we get humanitarian access to those people in the darkest, most dire need.
James, you know very well, air control is one of the key factors in deciding whether supplies, humanitarian supplies and military supplies, of course, could be shipped in to the areas of conflict. So how is UNICEF going to be able to make sure that it is still open to at least your operations, and at the same time being neutral? How have you been working on that in the past conflict situations, and how is it likely to help you this time?
Well, our neutrality is our brand. It's our heart and soul. It's everything. It doesn't matter where a child is from, a tribe, an ethnicity. We look to warring parties to stop. We look to conflicts to stop because they are so lethal and disastrous for children. But we go anywhere to support any child. Every conflict hits children in a similarly horrendous way, and every conflict is never of that child's making. These conflicts are not started by children, they are man-made. So UNICEF's neutrality is very consistent, whether we're in, South Sudan or whether we are here now in Ukraine. In terms of getting in air support, I think impossible right now. We have conversations with the Ukrainian government, and we continue to have access across the roads and across the borders with Poland and Romania and so on. So at the moment, it has to be a massive humanitarian response on those road routes. And as you rightly point out, it's so critical that humanitarian support is allowed to access those in need and humanitarian workers are safe.